I don't remember the exact words that started it. I remember the way my mother's mouth tightened first, as if the decision had already been made and the shouting was just ceremony. I remember my father standing slightly behind her, one hand on the doorframe, not intervening, not surprised. That part hurt more than the yelling. When the door opened and the cold rushed in, it felt like the house exhaled us. "Take your brat and get out." My mother screamed, her voice sharp with a confidence that came from knowing this was still her house. My daughter startled, her small fingers clutching the front of my sweater. Someone, my father, I think, pushed my shoulder. It wasn't violent. It didn't need to be. The message was already clear. I stepped back onto the porch. Snow blew sideways, fine and biting. Midnight had drained the street of everything except streetlights and wind. I pulled my coat around my daughter, folding her inside it the way I used to fold her blankets, just right so she wouldn't wake up at night. The door slammed. There was a moment when I stood there, waiting for something, an apology, a crack of hesitation, a reconsideration. Nothing came. The house was instantly quiet, the windows dark. I felt foolish for having expected anything else, so I started walking. At first, I walked quickly, anger carrying me, my breath coming out in short white bursts. Then my pace slowed. The cold demanded attention. My daughter's weight pressed into my chest, steady and warm, her breathing deepening as she fell back asleep. She trusted me without knowing why. That trust was heavier than the cold. I didn't cry. I noticed strange things instead. The way the snow erased the edges of the sidewalk. The way one streetlight flickered, as if undecided about staying on. A closed diner with a neon sign still humming, stubborn and alone. Every block felt like a small negotiation with myself. I could turn back. I could knock. I could apologize for things I wasn't sure I'd done. But the image of my parents' faces, resolved, offended, righteous, kept me moving forward. Turning back would not warm us. It would only teach my daughter that doors like that always reopen if you beg. Hours passed in pieces. I stopped counting them. The world narrowed to the sound of my boots and the careful way I shifted my coat so no wind reached her face. At some point, my anger burned out and left behind something quieter and more dangerous. Clarity. Weeks earlier, after another argument that ended in silence, I had made a call. Not dramatic, not vengeful. I had asked questions. I had described the living arrangement honestly. The volatility, the threats that were always framed as discipline or rules. I didn't expect anything to happen quickly. I just wanted a record. Something that existed outside family memory. Walking through the snow, I realized that record mattered now. By the time we reached a 24-hour pharmacy with lights blazing like a promise, my legs were numb. Inside, the heat hit me so hard I had to sit down. I bought hot chocolate I didn't want and held the cup between my hands while my daughter slept, her cheek flushed, her eyelashes damp from melted snow. I made another call. Short, factual. I gave an address. I answered questions. No one raised their voice. No one rushed me. That steadiness did something to me I hadn't expected. It steadied me back. I didn't go with them when they said they'd handle it. I found a cheap motel instead. I watched my daughter sleep under blankets that smelled like bleach and old soap. I sat in a chair and waited for morning. I wasn't there when the knock came. I imagine it clearly, though. The firm, professional rhythm. Not angry, not tentative. The sound of procedure. I imagined my mother opening the door in her robe, irritation already loaded, ready to assert herself. I imagined the moment her confidence fractured, not because she saw me, but because she didn't. Authority has a way of changing a room without raising its voice. Later, someone told me my parents screamed. Not in outrage, but in panic. Questions tumbling over each other. Accusations that went nowhere. My mother crying suddenly, loudly, as if volume could rewrite the night. My father trying to explain, to minimize, to contextualize. It didn't work. The consequences weren't cinematic. No one was dragged away in handcuffs. But lines were drawn. Notes were taken. Boundaries were stated out loud by someone they couldn't interrupt or dismiss. Power shifted not dramatically but decisively. Quiet became heavier than shouting. When my phone rang with the update, I listened without interrupting. I thanked the caller. My voice sounded distant to my own ears, like it belonged to someone else. After I hung up, I sat very still. I expected to feel victorious, or relieved, or furious all over again. Instead, I felt tired in a deep, clean way, like after a long illness breaks. The cold inside me, the one that had nothing to do with weather, began to loosen its grip. Forgiveness came later, and not all at once. It wasn't a grand decision. It was a series of small refusals, refusing to replay their words, refusing to imagine their fear as satisfaction, refusing to let this night define every future one. Forgiveness, I learned, didn't mean reopening the door. It meant closing it without slamming. My parents tried to call. I didn't answer. Not immediately. I wasn't ready to hear explanations that sounded like conditions. Silence, for once, belonged to me. Morning came pale and ordinary. My daughter woke up asking for cereal. She didn't remember the snowstorm. She remembered sleeping. As I watched her eat, crumbs scattering across a plastic table, I felt something unfamiliar but welcome dignity, returning without announcement. No revenge, no speech. Just the quiet knowledge that I had kept walking when stopping would have been easier. Some things remained unresolved. They still do. I don't know if my parents understand what they lost that night. I know only that my daughter learned, without ever being told. That warmth is something you carry forward, not something you wait to be given back. Outside, the snow melted slowly, leaving the streets wet and unremarkable, and life, stubborn and unspectacular, went on.